Look, it's no secret. I mean, most people like to keep their ballot a secret, but because of the nature of what I do, and as I was saying earlier, nobody ever takes my endorsements seriously anyway. I don't believe them when I read them in newspapers or in the like, but I made no secret of it. I went and voted early last Thursday, and some of us simply weren't going to be changing our minds before Election Day. And in good conscience, I said I could not vote for Mike Simpson, and I have my reasons, and I cited them. And I think a lot of people who I talk to, who are even devout Republicans, feel the same way, and they feel that we have simply gotten to the point where a lot of people just rubber stamp that vote because they know the name. And the other part of this is when you read a lot of your newspapers throughout southern Idaho, it seems that they never mention any candidates beyond the two major parties, or what we call the major parties, even though we don't have it's not in the Constitution anywhere that we have a two-party system. It doesn't mention political parties. This morning we have the Constitution Party candidate who is running in this race, and he's running against the incumbent. And of course, there's an unknown Democrat as well. I think she's raised him $3 or $4 in her campaign, but we want to welcome Anthony Tompkins back to the show. I don't know if you want to get the microphone a little closer, Anthony, but
Yeah.
we haven't seen you since, gosh, March maybe?
It might have been. It was actually February, probably
Wow, way
last week
back.
of February, I believe.
I
So.
still have the campaign literature on my desk. But first of all, it's good to see you.
Nice. Thank
And
you.
there is a reminder here to people out there that you're on that ballot as well.
Yes.
It's not just Lisa Marie and Mike Simpson.
Jennifer Martinez.
Jennifer Martinez,
Yeah.
excuse me. Well, again, it just shows you
Exactly.
that the Democrats have been so quiet in this race. You've actually become the de facto opposition.
In a sense, yes. And I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. She has raised more money than me if you look at her FEC reports. But as far as having an active campaign in the community, in different communities, I believe that I have a much more active campaign probably than both the other candidates. But I have a little bit of a bias to say that. So.
But he doesn't, I guess at this point, feel he needs to be everywhere because of name recognition.
Exactly.
So your challenge is to just show up places at events, parades, and
Yeah,
various festivals and the like, and make it known that you're in this race.
exactly. I've gone to maybe not more of the major community events, but the more subtle ones. I actually did trick or treating in the city park on uh, on Saturday, and that was a pretty fun experience just to see the different people. I got to talk with a couple people face to face, and all the costumes. Some people are really creative.
Well, it made me feel good to be able to go in there and pull the lever. Well, I say pull the lever, fill a little circle out for your name, and I'm sure you get a lot of that reaction from people. It's still an uphill climb though,
Oh yeah.
and a lot of people probably are still saying, okay, how do I how do you differ from Congressman Simpson? And that's a question I'm sure you get a lot.
It is, and I mean, our backgrounds are entirely different. I went to school in the Buell area, real rural. Uh, Grew up as a farm boy. I still got a little bit of that in me. Joined the military, although they don't endorse me. If I don't say that, I get in trouble. But and I'm still in. I actually reenlisted on Sunday, but uh, so I have that a little bit of that kind of background. The more I don't know if you'd call it redneck, but that kind of that country boy kind of background, even though I'm a computer tech and
We
everything else.
growing up
But
in dairy country, we used to call that just common sense, right? It was
yeah,
a common sense approach to life.
yeah, more down to earth. That listening to people, talking to them. I don't mind just if someone wants to talk to me when I'm at one of these events. I have to talk, if I'm talking to them, I have to kind of brush some other people off a little bit, and I don't mean it to be rude, but I'll sit there and I'll just talk to them, and they're not anyone eloquent or, and I use the term eloquent loosely. I mean I'm not saying that anybody I talked to wasn't
Plain spoken people.
decent, but just decent folks, decent normal folks that I wouldn't mind having a barbecue at my house with. So.
When people ask you this too, I think has to come up. They'll ask you, "Where do you think Mike Simpson went off the rails?" I mean, what? Because obviously, if you felt that he was getting the job done as a conservative Republican, you wouldn't be in this race.
You're absolutely right, and I'll be honest with you. 10 years ago, I thought he was the coolest person in politics ever. Um, so I have no really any malice towards the guy. It's just that I've seen that slowly and slowly he's creeped away from the values that I believe we hold dear here in Idaho, and it isn't anything necessarily drastic, but you put a frog in a boiling pot of water, it'll jump out. If you put it in a cold pot of water and set it to boil, you'll boil the frog to death. So that's kind of how I feel that that situation has happened. It's just been a slow creep, more spending on stuff and everything. I'm 28 years old, so the federal deficit and everything, the federal debt, that's going to affect me drastically because unfortunately, I plan on living for like the next 40 to 60 years. With all this new technology we got coming out. So,
Well, you know Dr. Tripp, and that helps.
yeah, yeah.
So at this stage of the game, and I know that referenced media earlier. It's difficult, it seems, in this day and age, to get media to pay attention to someone who's not on the Republican or Democrat line, and it's a big hurdle you've got to clear right away because that instantly gets them a lot of free press, if you will.
You're absolutely right. I've done well. I haven't done anything on going and knocking on anybody's doors, demand that they do that. But I will give a little bit of credit to your folks' organization here. You've done pretty decent in that department, and our local newspapers done really well in involving the third party candidates, at least in the federal races. I can't speak for the local races, but I think they've also done pretty decent in that respect too, um, irregardless of what they may or may not say about me.
It's a big district, and so you reference being a Buell native. You're really in the western side of it. He has that power base, obviously, on the eastern side.
Yes.
And do you notice a difference when you go to Pocatello and Idaho Falls? Or are you getting a good reception as well there?
I generally get a good reception just because I'm younger, uh, and a lot of the folks in that area that are politically involved are, I hate to use the term millennials, it makes me feel weird, but they're millennials like myself, college kids in Rexburg and Pocatello, and they can relate to me because I'm in the same shoes in a sense that they're in.
You talked a little bit earlier about how long you're going to be around. You'd like to be around on this planet. And we have a government that is $20 trillion in debt, and some people think we'll never come out from under that. It if you go to Washington, let's say that the lightning strikes that day and you're the guy and you go to Washington, what do you think your first order of business is?
The first order of business is I'm going to hop in my truck and drive over there. Um, and then when I get over there, I'm going to look at every bill that happens to be on the floor or what's being worked on, and I'm going to look at the ones, and if they are not constitutional, they will not have my support at all, not one bit. Uh, if it's going to be spending money in a way that we can't afford to spend the money and we're not willing to raise the tax for it, it will not have my support. So it's simple and ideological, but it's and as the as the person in the Times News put, not real world, but that's what we need.
I was going to say, not real world has led us to $20 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
That seems to me that somehow people out there they can't fathom the size of that number, and I guess they feel that therefore, if we just keep ignoring it, it's going to go away.
Oh, I did the math on it once, and it was like for every taxpayer in the United States, it's somewhere between 50 and $60,000 a piece. So if we're all willing to put in our $60,000 a piece, we can get that paid off in a jiff.
Well, want to point out Anthony Tompkins is in studio with us. It's coming up on 9:17, and right now it's 34, and he'll be here until 9:30. I've scheduled a good half hour.
Yeah.
If you'd like to take some telephone calls as well, that way we can get some in, if not necessarily in this segment, during the next segment. And of course, he's running for Congress, and his main foe is Mike Simpson. We want to mention it's 34. For people who'd like to know more, you had the web presence up, and first of all, when you said 28, everybody your age knows how to do that better than I do.
Yes, I have a website. It's www.anthonytompkins.com, and that's Tompkins spelled Tomkins.
You know, I know you said, the military does not endorse anybody who's running in this situation, but I look at a guy like Tom Cotton from Arkansas who's got the military background
Okay.
and got elected to the US Senate. Is there something in that specific training and that background that you think is very valuable going to Washington that maybe a lot of our current legislators don't have?
Well, I mean, being in the military and everything else, I've had to, uh, in a sense, stand up for the soldiers that are underneath me and stand up to uh, certain policies and everything else that could affect my soldiers poorly. And with that same attitude, I've got a little bit of a, a tinge of the disgruntlement towards the federal government, but with that same attitude, I'd go and I'd be defending and representing the people in the Idaho Second Congressional District.
It seems to me that we though live in a country that the values that you still at least find in the military used to be everybody's values. At least that's my perception. And that we've lost a lot of that, and that because we don't have that, that in its sense slows us down as a nation. We can't go forward without that.
I agree with you, and I see the values slipping in the military too. That's the big thing I try to teach all the soldiers is those values, going back to the founding documents, teaching them from the Declaration of Independence, teaching them those core values that it means to be an American uh, service member, and that having that on my side, I guess is probably what's helped prop me up through this whole race, through the different stresses and everything else going on. Because if I didn't have that, I would have been done back in June.
And remember, when people are looking for you, if they're even doing a search on you online, Tompkins is Tomkins. There's no P or H in there, like there
No
is in
P or H.
some
Yeah,
spellings of it around the
yeah.
country.
And sometimes it'll pop up even if you do accidentally put a P in it. I don't think it will if, with an H because that's not as popular of a spelling. But
That'll help people out. I hope that they're going and they're taking a look at that website because Anthony is a very stand-up guy, and he's going to spend a few more minutes with us on the other side of the break. He's 34 right now. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Our studio guest is Anthony Tompkins, and he's joining us this morning. And he happens to be on the Constitution Party line for Congress. As we mentioned earlier, he's likely the biggest challenger in this district to Mike Simpson. Election day, of course, is just 6 days away. And Anthony, that's a good place to jump off. The Constitution Party is obviously not the Republican Party, but it is a very conservative party, isn't it?
I'll be honest with you. I don't like to use the terms liberal or conservative because they've been, well, my opponent claims that he's conservative right on his website, and his level of conservative and somebody else's may be into something entirely indifferent. So I prefer to use the term constitutional patriot.
Do you know that, yeah, Raul Labrador's rating from the American Conservative Union is double that of Mike Simpson's.
Yes, I do.
So when you use that label, I mean, you can water it down
Yeah.
sometimes. And what are they trying to conserve other than their own position, I guess?
Yeah. No,
What,
so
well, go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
So the Constitution Party does have those conservative principles, and we, a lot of the things are in a sense mirrored to the Republican Party. Now there are some strong differences, um, namely the things like the border. The Constitution Party believes that instead of and we're not against building a wall by any means, but it's more we feel that our military troops should be the ones defending our borders. Um, Bring a lot of them home, put them on our borders, and defend our country in that way instead of using different branches of the executive branch of the government.
Plus, they spend their pay here versus Okinawa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to boost the economy already.
We've got about 5 minutes to go. What's the reaction? Have you encountered Mr. Simpson much in this whole process? What's the reaction you're getting out of him?
I've actually never personally met the guy, and I haven't heard anything
Do you think that
at
he's
all.
he's basically taking a bunker strategy that he just hides and expects that the people in this district are going to reelect him?
Um, I don't know if hides is necessarily the right term. He has made some public appearances that I guess I hear from other folks, and but I do believe that it is more of a passive strategy. Uh, and you know what? I can't blame him. He's the sitting Republican, the incumbent. A lot of people think he's done really well. The Times News gave him a great review and endorsed him. They said some good things about me though. So
And they're probably telling you, well, wait your turn, which you hear in politics a lot, as if somehow it's somebody else's job for now, and if you just wait and be a good soldier, you'll get it later on.
I guess I could have got that out of that particular article, but that's
I've heard from people and I remember when I was a young man, my dad telling me I'd moved away, but one of our neighboring congressmen was Jack Kemp. And a TV station went out to his address and discovered the grass was growing in front of his house about 3 feet high because he was actually living in Northern Virginia and raising his family there. And I've heard that, and I can't prove this, but I've heard that Mr. Simpson as well is an occasional visitor to Idaho, but not necessarily a resident of Idaho any longer.
I and I don't know that or anything like that. I kind of feel bad because my grass is a little bit high on my front lawn. My wife's probably I told you so right now, but but I'm a Idaho resident. I have no intention to live outside the state or anything else, and I mean I'm not going to make that my permanent residence on the East Coast.
We're gonna try to squeeze a caller in here. Coming
Oh,
up on
cool.
928. Caller, you're on the air with Anthony Tompkins. Go ahead.
Good morning, Anthony. I am very so glad to hear that somebody else is running against Simpson. I've been trying to get rid of him for eons. And, it doesn't surprise me at all, some of the endorsements that he gets, considering how he votes. This election, if nobody opposed him, I would vote for the Democrat just because then I would know and expect the kind of voting he would do.
Early on when I started this, that's pretty well exactly how I felt, and this is no discredit to Mrs. Martin or Mrs. Martinez. I believe she just got married, but to her at all in her campaign. But uh, yeah, I probably would have voted the same way, and that's a big reason why I ran, and I ran the way that I did so that I could be on the general ballot this year.
Republicans in general, how do they treat you when they meet you?
I get a mixed reaction. Some Republicans are really really think that what I'm doing is great, and then a lot of them are, hey, I'm Republican, I got to vote the same way.
We're going to ask you to stick around another 5 minutes simply because my telephones are ringing, so I know people would
Okay.
like to speak to you. And you can do that.
Oh, excellent.
You
Yeah.
don't have to go out and plow the back 40. It's fall, so.
Oh, no, no, no.
We've got more with Constitution Party candidate for Congress, Anthony Tompkins, on the way. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 33. If you have a question or a comment for Anthony, he's going to stick around a few more minutes beyond the break. So be patient. That's on the way in just a couple of minutes. Our studio guest is Constitution Party candidate Anthony Tompkins, and he's looking to unseat Mike Simpson in Congress this year. I do want to point out you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story today. At 9:33, it's 33, and I have to mention freezing temperatures like we felt this morning. A good time to consider getting some maintenance done if you really need it on that furnace. It's going to get much colder. You need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric today. The team at Ramsey's will get the job done. They'll make sure it's done right the first time. Problem-free cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. Telephone number 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric. They sell warm winters and cool summers. Anthony, very popular with telephone callers this morning, so if you don't mind, we'll go back to the telephones.
All right.
Caller, you're up next with Anthony Tompkins. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of one of those voters who also voted mainly against Simpson and even against Crapo. Mainly because I'm kind of tired of the politicians and the elected officials that have been in there so long. And I think you referenced this a while back, Bill, that they seem now to believe they own that elected position and are entitled to it, and they've forgotten the fact that actually we the people are the ones who own that position. They serve at our pleasure, not theirs, and that's why I voted for this gentleman as a constitutionalist. I'd like to see some fresh blood and see if we can get some new ideas going and maybe some just better things happening in our government.
Well, I want to thank you for the call. You know, there's an old line from George Will, Anthony, where he said that too many people in public office believe it's their private property. Do you get that impression?
Yes, very much so. Well, I ask people just out on the street what the most powerful position in our government is, and a lot of them will say president or senator or governor, but I remind them it's them, the people.
We have another caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Anthony Tompkins, and I'll call it 9:35. Go ahead.
Yes, Anthony. Mike Simpson has been detached from us for quite a while. And like somebody said to me, he's a citizen of Washington, D.C., and has no intentions of coming back here other than to visit. And so he no longer cares. And it's obvious if you go around to a Lincoln Day banquet, I can chase down Rish and Crapo pretty easily. I've tried, it's like he's a fart in the wind, old Simpson. You can't catch him. And when you do catch him, he won't talk to you. He's aloof, somewhat arrogant. You'd like to grab him by the collar and tune him up, but you see, you can't do that. So can we get rid of him? I don't know. It'd be nice. And so it costs a lot of money to get rid of people. Okay, that one more quick thing. I noticed Crapo's spending a lot of money on a campaign that's unnecessary. I don't know how these campaign funds work. I should know. I probably did in the past. And but why is he spending money on a campaign that's unnecessary when it could be going for something that would be more beneficial? Thanks.
A lot of people out there, there's an undercurrent of all of this. And, I think that sometimes the party leadership is there's a belief that they're going to come back in after this year and just reimpose their control grid. Do you see it breaking down?
I do. Everybody I've talked to that's early voted, anyone that told me who they voted for have told me they voted for me, and I guess they have a vested interest to do that. But it's been quite a few people,
and you don't have the money, obviously, to spend on these huge advertising campaigns and
no,
yard signs and bumper stickers and the like.
No, you're absolutely right, and I did forget your bumper sticker, but I'll get it to you here pretty soon.
For full disclosure, what I did is I was given a Simpson bumper sticker at the state convention, and I was using it to cover up another bumper sticker that was dirty, and which I hadn't been able to remove. And so what I did was I used the Simpson bumper sticker basically to try to look cleaner. And what I did after voting last week is I walked out of County West and I just ripped it off the Jeep. Decided I wasn't going to be keeping that there any longer. And I think that a lot of people you're meeting obviously have the same feeling. Got about a minute to go. Before we wrap up, for people who'd like to know more about you, what's the website address?
It is www.anthonytompkins.com. Tompkins spelled Tomkins, no P or H. And I have a Facebook page. You can search me, Anthony Tompkins. You can even search me on Google search engine, Anthony Tompkins, and I'll pop right up, and it even has some of my platform and stuff on there.
We'd like to point out Anthony is really the future of politics in Idaho because there aren't many people under the age of 30 who are seeking political office. It's rare.
No, well, me and the Democrat opponent are under the age of 30.
It's just it's refreshing to see that, and for the Republican establishment leaders out there, guys like you are going to be the leaders of the party in a few years, or any party in
Yeah,
a few
I
years.
hope there's a bit of a younger group that gets out there. And it's part of my campaign is that I've wanted to tell everybody that some dumb farm boy from Buell, Idaho can go and attack one of the most powerful politicians in the United States and do decent. And that means anybody else can do it.
I don't think anyone's questioning your intelligence.
Thank
Well, thank you for coming by this morning. Wish you the
you.
best of luck. I've already pulled the lever, as I say, and I voted for Anthony. We'll leave it up to the rest of you at this point. And we've got 20 more minutes of the program coming up. We've got some closing thoughts on some of the other political races just ahead. And hopefully we'll talk to Anthony next week when he pulls off the major upset.